So without further ado, let's introduce you to our amazing panelists as speakers today. I'm so excited to have Carrie Barrett, who is co-hosting this event with me. She's been amazing. She's the founder of Carrie Barrett Consulting, which is a full-service consulting, public speaking and media presenting strategy firm. She is an award-winning breaking news anchor with over 20 years of broadcasting, reporting, and producing experience. So she has made this entire month a delight. All my speakers can't comment enough on how just great it is to be chatting with her. So thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us and for being here. And as our guest speaker today, we have Danusha Sivaji. She oversees the Knot worldwide family brands across the globe, including the Knot, Wedding Wire India, The Bump, and The Nest, reaching over 40 million women each month. Prior to the Knot Worldwide, she served as AOL as the Chief Marketing Officer of the AOL Brand Group, where she was responsible for driving audience growth across AOL's portfolio of digital brands. She comes with a great amount of wisdom and knowledge for us. So she's also held senior lead level marketing and content development positions at Bloomberg and HBO, where she led all consumer and go marketing strategies for Bloomberg's suite of mobile apps. Sivaji received a BS in International Management from the University of Manchester, England. So you'll see her lovely accent, which I always enjoy listening to, and also has an MBA from Duke University. So thank you, Danusha, for being here today and agreeing to speak to our audience and providing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. My accent at this point is, I've been told, sound Australian because I've been in this.
Beautiful. I love listening to you.
Oh, thank you.
I love listening to you. So I'll pass it over to you, Carrie, to facilitate this session. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. We love to hear from you. And with that, Carrie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, a quick reminder, ask those questions in the chat. We're going to get through them chronologically. I will try and leave enough time at the end of our talk with Danusha to answer your questions if you have any that we have not addressed. So with that said, let's get right to it. We've got about a half an hour to speak. And Danusha, we are so glad to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
I'm excited too, and it's interesting because when you and I first spoke over the phone, just to kind of get to know one another and kind of craft what it is that we were going to be talking about today, you were in the middle of baking a cake for one of your children's birthdays, and there was a million other things going on behind the scenes, which is, I feel like, par for the course, especially the last few months, but always has been the case for women that are mothers that are working outside of the home. First things first, how are you? How's the family holding up? What's going on?
We are doing great. Thank you for asking. So I'm originally, from the East Coast, obviously live in Westchester, New York, but we made the call, rightly or wrongly, at the end of May to come out to Wyoming. So as Nicole mentioned, I'm originally from England, but I've always had these dreams of coming out west and spending time. And I said to my husband, I'm like, when are we ever going to get to, work remotely from anywhere again? And so that silver lining for us as it relates to COVID and everything else that's been going on is that for the last 5 weeks, and we just extended, we're going to go down to Utah now. We've been working remotely from the mountains of Wyoming, but also enjoying the amazing landscape and just feeling one at nature. So I feel very lucky and privileged to be able to do that.
It is absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to ask you a little question. Where are you going in Utah?
We're going to go down to Zion.
Oh my gosh. I lived in Utah for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, just extended yesterday, and we're going to go 8 hours in any direction. So we decided to go down.
Yes, Zion, Bryce, St. George, all of it. It's beautiful. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Send me a tip, please. I have no idea. We literally just changed our tickets yesterday, and now I'm trying to find a place to stay.
You can't go wrong. I mean, it's beautiful from top to bottom and east to west. So anyway, all right. Attendees, we'll stop talking about Utah right now, and we'll get to what you want to know. We'll talk about that later. What Danusha and I are speaking about today is the issue of mom guilt, right? So technically minding your guilt, managing your personal and professional expectations. And we understand that, but it's so darn hard to do, and especially now so. And one of the things that you and I spoke about when we were on the phone, however many weeks ago it was, 5 or 6 weeks ago now, is that we do, even though being a working mother is not a novelty anymore and it's not new necessarily anymore, we suffer the lion's share of the guilt when it comes to parenting. And it's like this we don't feel like we're doing enough, and then what we do, we feel like we're not doing good enough, right? Would you agree with that? Or we're not doing well enough?
It's been something that I've struggled with for the last 20 years in my career, and just very fortunate enough that our company is about 75% women and a lot of working moms, and it's just something that I've become really passionate on the topic of, because there's just so many instances where I'll find between the men and the women in our group, and again, like I said, we have a lot of women at our company, is that there is just always that sense of, like you said, those two things. It's like we always feel like we're not doing enough. And then what we are doing, we always feel like we're not good enough. And it's just whether I'm talking to my friends who are working moms or talking to people on my team and my peers and coworkers, etc. It's just that general theme, right? And it comes through in many different ways. Sometimes it just comes with people just apologizing all the time for things. It comes out that way. Other times it just comes out from like just the stress of like, oh my God, like how am I gonna, I just feel like I just suck at everything. Like that's sort of like the general thing that comes across, like, and I'm like, why? I know we're going to get into it, but I'm always like, I just feel like I've made it my mission in life to just make sure that us as women, of course, everybody that is working moms, we just, we can shed that guilt. And in the last 5 to 10 years, I feel like I've been able to do that for the better, and would love to have a dialogue about it and see how we can keep improving.
Yeah, well, so you're absolutely right. And I think before we talk a little bit, I want to find out how you do it. But one of the things that it's so baked in sometimes that we don't even recognize the way all this negative talk that we have about ourselves and how we're doing, not only as parents, but as professionals. And I will tell you, just in the past 6 weeks, in the course of regular conversations with friends and business associates, et cetera, and parenting comes up, and I've had probably 4 or 5 people say to me, why are you so hard on yourself? And I didn't even recognize that I was all of this garbage up here was coming out here. And I was telling people like how badly I felt about how sucky of a job I was doing, but I didn't even recognize it. I think that's part of the problem too, is that we've accepted that that's how we should feel. We should just feel crappy all the time.
Right. And for what, you know what I mean? And it's, I always say, like, try and be your own best friend, because if your friend came to you and was saying those things, you would be like, well, wait a minute, let's stop and think about all the things you've done, all the things, right? But we don't do that for ourselves. Like, and I just say, like, if we take nothing away from this, like just being your own best friend and analyzing your mental state and your behavior through that lens, I think really helps. Because think about what we would say to our female working mom friend, how would we treat them? What would we tell them? And just doing that for ourselves, I think.
So what do? Are there certain strategies or tactics that you apply? You said about 10 years ago, it seems like you were able to, maybe it's not perfect, but figure out a strategy for dealing with this guilt. So what do you do?
Yeah, and it came from just as I've just sort of moved up the career ranks, I think I sort of noticed that I was doing this, and it was actually a blocker to me, right? Because I would sort of feel like, wait, I can't do this. How, like, I would start feeling guilty. I'm like, well, I can't possibly take this job and be a good mom, right? I found myself at that sort of crossroads of like, can I move up the corporate ladder? And so it was then that I was like, okay, I need to sort of change my mindset on everything. And so in the end, not to sort of, I try and, I'm a marketer, so I like to boil everything down, into bullet points, right? But I think for me, it was like 3 things. The first, as you touched upon, was like just making it all about yourself. I know that feels really weird as working moms when we've got so many constituents that we're trying to serve, our colleagues, our company, as well as our families. But I actually find now I'm like, I always I put myself first, right? And I know initially people are like, well, isn't that weird? Like, isn't that selfish? And I'm like, no, because if I'm not bringing my best self to the table, then I can't help anybody. I can't help my husband. I can't help my kids. I can't help, I can't better anybody. Yeah. The second, I know a lot of women have talked about this, is imposter syndrome within that first sort of context, like putting yourself first. It was something that I feel like we do a lot of, which is, we always feel like we're not good enough, we haven't got the right credentials, or, there's a little bit more research that we can do before we're presenting our idea. And when you look at men, they just don't do that, right? Like time and time again, the research shows that women, if there are more women in leadership positions, women in boards, those companies do better. But yet when women look at themselves, they don't look at that data, they don't look at the impact that they've had. They always feel like there's more that they could have done before they're asking for that promotion, or more that they could have done to hit that goal. And so I just really just encourage all of us just to put that aside. Like, there is a reason we are all sitting here today having this conversation. No matter what roles we're in, we deserve to be there. Do you know what I mean? We deserve to be doing what we're doing right now. And it didn't just sort of happen out of nowhere. Like, we've done all the steps to get there. And so I think just really putting yourself first and making sure that you're putting that imposter syndrome aside is number one. Number two, this is going to sound really bizarre, but I do this both. My whole thing is like the guilt. We feel the guilt both on the personal and professional side. Yes. And I think it's really important with this number two around goals. A lot of times we think of goals in that corporate setting, right? Like, we have quarterly company goals, we have our own individual goals, we're setting them every day, hopefully at work. But taking that same process and bringing it to the work, to the family, has been something that has really been pivotal and defining for me. I'd say, 5 years ago, my husband and I, our marriage was not in a very good place, just putting it out there. It's a small group. We all, let's keep it honest. And I actually, we've all been there, like kids under 5. Yeah. But actually, I started taking the things that were working for me. I was like, okay, how am I defining success at work? That's really important, because at times I think a lot of working moms feel like we have to do the FaceTime, right? We have to be at certain meetings. We have to be. And once I started focusing very much on like working with my CEO and saying like, you know what, these are the 5 things I'm going to do to, in terms of success for the company. Are we aligned? He's like, yes. At that point, it sort of levels the playing field, because there isn't this, how are you going to do it? All we care about is, what does success look like? If I want to do that from 5 to 6 in the morning, and then I'm out, especially right now with COVID, I'm out for a little bit, I don't need to feel guilty anymore, because I know what the goal is. I know I'm going to achieve it. And that's the focus, right? And that's how I'm going to move ahead, and that's how I'm going to help the company. And it was the same thing that my husband and I did with the kids a couple of years ago, which was actually like setting family goals. Because I think too often we all look around and we see other working moms and other parents doing things. You're like, oh my God, I need to do that. I need to do that. And it's like really overwhelming, as opposed to just stepping back and saying, okay, what's actually important to us this year? What are our goals as a family? What's really important to us this quarter, right? And so, for example, this quarter we said, you know what? It's really important to us to spend like more time together as a family. That might not be the case next quarter, and that's okay, right? But once you define them and once you put them on paper, it just makes it a lot easier, because then you don't get as, I felt like I was always getting distracted by other people's goals and what other people were doing, right? And you have that guilt, oh my God. Once you say, you know what, every quarter, these are the 5 things that are important to me work-wise, this is what success looks like, these are the 5 things that, are important to me family-wise. And every quarter it's something different. So right now it's really about spending time with my family. I tell you, already next quarter, I'm already thinking about it. It's going to be about my girlfriends. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because I've sort of like, I've set those goals and put some boundaries around them, and then you feel success, because you can actually, like, at the end of the quarter, be like, okay, I said these 3 things and I did them. Right? So you have a sense of like, you sort of defined what success looked like, and then you actually went after it. Whereas I felt like, and I don't know if many of you, feel free to type in your comments there, but I feel like I was going through this, I didn't even know what success looked like, right? It was always just like this guilt, like someone was doing something, it's like, oh my God, I haven't done that with my kids. And then as soon as I was like, wait, who cares what everyone else is doing? Like, what does it look like for me? Really focusing on the goals. The other thing I do is just, again, it may sound a little bit weird, but agendas. Like, we were having so many miscommunications at home. You know what I mean? It was like we had these conversations, but we never wrote down like next steps, action items from discussions we had, right? Whether it was like anything from like who was sort of following up on kids' activities that week, et cetera, et cetera. And so as soon as I put it into the framework of what would we do at work, right? We have agendas, we do next steps, agenda item, right? Like we do action items. And so just applying things that we would sort of come second nature to at work and bringing them into the work, into the home life. I'm not trying to say it's for everyone, but for me, it has been very helpful because there's accountability and there's also a sense of like, this is what it looks like.
Well, and if you set those priorities ahead of time, then you can target them. You can make sure that you hit them. It's not just like this kind of nebulous high level, I'd like to be better at this kind of thing. That's especially hard to read. What does that even mean?
But what does it mean? If you don't have a goal, then you will just constantly be just, I feel like, in a state of guilt and never feeling accomplished.
Yeah. And well, and so I know you haven't gotten to point three yet, but very quickly, how do you have a strategy for prioritizing your family as opposed to work, or what does that look like?
No, because that's the thing. I think a lot of times people are like, how do you balance? How do you do it? And I just think, especially as working moms, right? I believe we are all working because we want to have an impact, right?
Yeah.
We want to have an impact in our work lives, but we also want to have an impact in our family lives. So in fact, what I do is I just say it's like 3 and 3. So that's it. It's like, what are the 3 big goals for, work-wise this quarter, which we're doing as part of our, like we said OKRs. And then I do the same thing at home too. Do you know what I mean? And so how you get there is similar to sort of how we talked about like FaceTime at work. How we get there is it's up to us, right? But it's more like you're defining what your end state is, and then you give yourself permission to get there however you want, right? Like, so I don't really sort of sit there and go like, okay, for the whole quarter, this is how I'm going to spend my time. I focus more on those are the 3 things I want to accomplish.
So my daughter has, 5 ballet recitals. I'm not going to be able to make all of them. Here are the ones that I want to go to. I are important, whatever. And then being okay with not having gone to every single one.
Yes. Or just not to be getting like a little bit theological with this, but is the goal actually going to your daughter's ballet recitals? Or it's like, I sometimes always push people, I push myself to be like, what is actually the goal? Because I'm stressing about the tactics and the initiatives, but in the end, like, what is my end state, right? And so it may be in the case of your daughter of ballet, it's like you want her to improve in a certain, I'm guessing, right? That's why you're sending her to ballet. You want her to do something she's passionate about. So that might be the end state. Whether you're there or not is not necessarily, like that's, so that's one way of looking at it. You may also have said, hey, another goal is I actually would like to see my daughter, perform at ballet because that's really important to me. I want to see. But then what does that look like? That may mean like I'm going to go to one recital and next one. So I think defining the goal a bit differently, because then how you get there may not look like you're going to all 5.
Sure.
Right. I think that's sort of part of it. I think sometimes we define success a little bit too narrowly in terms of like, I must be in, as opposed to sort of an emotional state or like a state.
Yes, I must check all of these boxes of the things that I've participated in, when really it's like I just need the ultimate goal is for her or for our children to feel supported and like they have a right? And so that doesn't necessarily have to come by attending specific events, but it is an overarching. That makes so much sense. That has just twisted everything, I think, on its head.
Oh, and it's like, it's easy to fall into that trap, I think, of like checking a box and going like, my goal is this, but sometimes those goals are so narrow and small when really when you step back, you're like, well, actually that's not even the goal. So why am I even stressing about it?
Right. 100%.
You know what I mean? Like there could be a better way to get to that goal of empowering her to do something that she's passionate about in this case, ballet. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. 100%. That makes sense. Okay. So I got, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I got you off track. What was point number 3? Sorry. I had a million questions about
the
number 2.
first point, as we said, it's like, it's all about you. Make sure you respect who you are and don't suffer from imposter syndrome. The second one is actually just setting like true measurable goals that feel like impactful, not like checking up a box. And then the third one is going to sound bizarre, but like to me, it is really, really important to then just make sure that we're always getting feedback and getting better. And as soon as I sort of think, again, it's something we do at work all the time, right? We do reviews, we do the quarterly, we could all argue, do we do them well or better? And I've got some tips on that. But taking that same concept and bringing it to the home, I think before it was always like, I always felt like I had to be like the best mom, right? Like I couldn't make any mistakes, couldn't be failures. And if I did, then it was like, you're a bad mom. And then that guilt, sort of starts coming in. And as soon as I started looking at it, it's like, well, no, we're all works in progress. And whether it's the goals I'm trying to hit at work or the goals I'm trying to hit at home, I need help, right? I need people to give me feedback. I need to assess how I'm doing. And it's okay. Like we use terms like failing fast at work, right? Like, hey, you failed, like all the sort of like buzzwords that we know to be true in the workplace. I felt like I wasn't really, bringing them into home. It was sort of like I was judging myself and feeling so guilty when I was making mistakes. So I didn't want to ask for help or for feedback, because it's like if I was asking for feedback, that means that clearly I wasn't as good as I was supposed to be. I thought I was supposed to be. I'm
asking, but I really don't want to hear it.
Yeah, because if I do, that's a sign of weakness, right? Like, so as a mom, you're supposed to know it all. You're supposed to just be as good as like there's no feedback. There's no like getting better. And as soon as I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like as soon as you hear yourself saying that, you're like, that's ridiculous. Like, of course, we're always like, that's the whole point of being in the workplace, right? It's like feedback, getting better every day. I felt like I was always out telling my team this notion of feedback is a gift, which I truly believed in the workplace.
Yeah.
And yet I wasn't doing that at home.
Yeah.
And so we started doing just like these weekly family meetings where we would actually say, okay, like what are everyone's goals for the quarter? And then I would actually, someone had once said to me, like, you know, kids just want to feel like they have power and a say in what they're doing. And it was really amazing that when I suddenly said to them, like, well, mommy was trying to do this week. You know, how does she do? And, you know, it actually opened up like a dialogue where they were like, well, like that was really good. But like, maybe if we had done this instead, like they actually felt like they had a say in kind of like my development as a mom. And so it was like cute. It's like suddenly the burden was lifted off of me that I had to be this like perfect mom all the time and like, you know, not, you know, like never make mistakes. But I think it also gave them a sense of empowerment that they could be like, oh, this person, like, you know, I think kids look up to their parents so much. And I think, I'm trying to remember who told me that, because it was sort of like just opened up this sort of, I'm like, oh, you're right. When you suddenly say to them like, hey, I'm not sure about this. What do you think? Could I have done this differently? Like it just opened up a whole new way to like just communicate and just sort of, I guess, have our family move forward.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense. If I think about the ways that I talk to my kids, and my kids are younger, so obviously the language is perhaps a little bit different, but our planning right now and the things that we do are very just kind of like, oh, we're going to do this, and oh, we're going to do this. And really, when it kind of goes back to the point that you made before, like, what is the ultimate goal? Is it to be supportive? Is it to help her grow? Is it to help her feel confident? I'm talking about my daughter now specifically, but for all of us. And if we have these kinds of conversations with feedback, we may realize that there are elements to their development or personality or questions that they have that we haven't even explored, and they would prefer us to do it this way rather than, right? You don't need to go to my ballet recital. I just want you to sit down with me for 10 minutes after practice and ask me how it went. You know what I mean? There's just,
right. Exactly.
We're listening to them, which is like sometimes a little bit hard to do.
No, but just being curious, like I just like suddenly, exactly, like getting their feedback. Like, you know, 5 years ago wouldn't have been something that was even on my radar, but just, you know, changing that now, I'm like, oh, wow, like, like you said, you see what's important to them and what they actually care about. I have this funny story of like, you know, class parents, class moms. Yeah. So, you know, classic guilt that I have not yet been a class mom or a class parent. Right. Because it wasn't on my goals, right? To be honest, right? I couldn't sort of frame it as to why I would do it. I truly appreciate everyone that is doing it. That said, I brought it up with my son one day and I said, you know, do you want me to be a class mom? Oh, no, that's not true. So he started the conversation. And I was like thinking to myself, like, shit, like, okay, like he clearly wants, because he's talking about a class mom and, you know, like, why haven't I done it? And I'm like, oh my God, clearly he wants me to. And then somehow it came up in the conversation that you don't get paid to be a class parent or a class mom. And then he was like, oh, he's like, no, I definitely don't want you to do it. Like, I thought we could make some extra cash and I could get some extra course out of it. But like, no, like he was like, I don't care at all. He's like, you know, that's not, you know, he appreciated what other class moms were doing, but it was important. So it was just like, yeah, he was like, screw that, you don't get paid? No, hell no. And I was like, oh, okay, then, well, I don't want to about it.
You're out.
Anyway.
Off the hook.
But just going to like this point about different perspectives and just having the conversation of like what your kids actually want you know, what makes them happy. You know, you'll be surprised by like the things that you think you're supposed to be doing that would make you, you know, you could feel guilty about versus what's really important to them. So I don't know what that tells you about my son. He clearly likes making money, but you know.
I'm fully supportive.
Whole other topic.
So I cannot believe we're at 125. We're running out of time, but I have two additional questions that I want to ask you. And one of them is about your mom and the role that your mom played in, I mean, she was a strong role model for you, correct? A strong woman, and she helped you frame this out, I guess.
Yeah, no, she did, because it's like as I sort of landed on some of these concepts we've talked about, it was funny. I sort of thought back to my mom and I was like, God, like I learned a lot of these things from her without realizing, and it's almost like I had to sort of relearn them, right? Because sometimes you can get them and then sort of life takes you down, your mind and your guilt takes you down different roads. But no, it's very lucky. She was originally from Sri Lanka, so they moved, you know, after the Civil War, they moved to England. And she didn't have an education to speak of. So, you know, she sort of did all kinds of, I joke that very stereotypically we had every kind of small business you can imagine, from gas stations to laundromats, bingo halls.
Yeah.
So I basically worked all nights and, you know, weekends trying to, you know, help my parents. But like I said, I think I just sort of learned that I always use my phrase, it's like hungry and humble. It's kind of how I always say everyone should have their personal brand, right? Like, how would people describe you? And so a couple of years ago, going back to like knowing yourself, I sort of did this exercise where I asked a lot of people, I'm like, if you could pick like 2 words to describe me, and I did that with a lot of other people to describe themselves too. And I was like, what's your personal brand? What's your hallway reputation? You know, how are you known? And so hungry and humble are the 2 words that came out that, you know, people were like, yeah, you want to win, but you do it with humble. I'm like, okay. I was like, I'll take that. But
Yeah.
it's like, those words are sort of like words that, you know, if I was asked, someone asked me about my mom, those were the 2 that I'd also be like, yeah, you know, she wanted to succeed. She came to a country, you know, not being able to really speak the language and be able to succeed, but she was very humble about it. So I'm sure a lot of us have those stories about our moms.
We appreciate everything she did and everything our mothers have done and our parents have done. The final question that I'd like to ask you, and it's like that age-old question, can you not, can you have some? What is this whole can you have it all thing? What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I guess I never asked myself, can I have it all? But I definitely think I can have whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Because I do think when we boil it down to like going back to these goals things, when you truly sit back and go like, what are the things that are most important to you? And if you just ask anyone in a workplace, or you ask moms, parents, I feel like we all want to have an impact in some way, right? On the people that we're touching, whether it's our families personally or professionally in the companies that we're part of. So I guess my take on it is I don't look at it, I don't even know what all means, right? I think it goes back to, I do really think you can have whatever it is you want, but then you have to do the hard work of actually going, what do you want? Right? And that's where I think a lot of us get tripped up, because it's like, well, so-and-so wants this, so-and-so. It's like, forget what everyone else wants. Like, what is going to make you happy, you living your best life? And it's different for all of us. And I think sort of accepting that and saying, you know what, success to me this year, 5 years from now, looks like this. It doesn't mean you can't change it. Like we said, with feedback, we always get better. I guess another my take on it, I do think we can have what we want if we really set clear goals for ourselves and just go after those few things.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to sort of do a lot of things and say we want it all. I don't even know if we actually want that. You know what I mean?
Right. Just casting the net wide and seeing what little things we can pick up.
Yeah, let's do a few big things well. Do you know what I mean? That are actually meaningful to us as individuals, that can have a big impact.
It was so great to speak to you. It's 1:30. It was wonderful to talk to you. Before I let you go, I just want to remind our attendees a couple of things. Obviously, when you register for this event, you do not have to donate, but if you do choose to donate, any money that you donate goes to putting a roof over a single mom's head, a mom who is either homeless or on the verge of homelessness. That's all through a charity that we work very closely with, Project Kind. Their website is projectkind123.org. You can also text Project Kind to 44321 if you'd like to make a donation as you listen to this. Again, you don't have to, but we sure do appreciate every dollar that comes in.